time, I knew things were different. They were beating me to kill me. I was bouncing off the walls. They broke my arm, my jaw, and when I fell down, they started to stamp upon me and throw insult upon insult upon insult.
Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Conversations with Sharika. My name is Sharika Swaby. I am a spiritual alignment coach, a author of a book called An Introduction to Freedom. I am also the host of this show, and today, where did you go? Today I have with me the beautiful Nina the Brit. She is a lot of things, right? She has an extensive resume and an extensive bio, which I'm going to allow her to tell you about. But just a little bit about her. She is London's life coach to the elite, right? She is a best-selling author. She's a TEDx speaker, and she's an activist who speaks about honor killings, child marriages, domestic violence awareness, and prevention. So please, Nina, welcome to Conversations with Sharika.
Hi everyone. So thanks for having me, Sharika. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Nina. I am Nina. I speak out about honor killings, gender-based violence, human trafficking, anything that's really against any human rights that we all fundamentally should have. I speak out about domestic violence, mental health, and generally I speak about these things because I've been through a lot of those things myself. So when things affect us personally, we tend to want to speak out and help someone else not go through the trauma that we've been through. On a daily basis, I'm a mindset performance coach to UFC fighters, MMA fighters, and other elite athletes all over the world. I'm very blessed to have this job, and I help them gain that can-do mindset whereby if they have any doubts, pure calmness is sort of created for them so that when they are going into that ring or stepping into that cage, they have the belief that they will do whatever it is they're intending on doing, which is to win. And all of us in life have that fight, whether we know it or not. We're all fighting against something, so that's what I'm about.
Beautiful. I love that. I looked at your bio and I saw that you're an ambassador for a number of things, and you're very, very much involved in so many things. How do you do it?
It's because I have this amazing amount of love that I want to help others. Like I said, if it's affected you personally, you want to do what you can. Mm-hmm. I am involved with a child bride organisation, which is End Child Brides. I'll give them a shout out. They're based in Zimbabwe. What we do is we keep girls in schooling, because after 12, if they're not in school, they get married to men that are older than them. But we want to keep them in school, and by doing that, people donate just a cup of coffee, just that amount of money, which collectively helps us to keep a girl in education so she doesn't have to get married. And then she goes on to work and she comes back and helps another girl. I was a child bride myself. My marriage was sort of arranged, I would say, at the age of 14, 15. So I understand that you're just a child and you're missing out on so much. The other thing that I'm involved with is, where do I start? I'm involved with something in America called the City of Tomorrow, which I probably don't have on my paperwork that I handed to you. And we create sustainable environments for people to live, affordable housing, because I was homeless myself. We help veterans, and we help people to understand how they can financially support themselves. So yeah, I am very busy. Tuesdays are my busiest days because they're my giving days, and that's my charity days. Yeah.
Okay, I love what you do. I love that you are such a free-spirited, loving giver, and I think the world needs a lot more of people like you. So hats off to you for doing that. Now, I have you here on this show today because I saw your TED Talk. Well, I saw you in the WhatsApp group first, and I checked out your bio on LinkedIn. Then I watched your TED Talk, and I thought, I have to have this lady on my show. So first of all, I want to say thank you once more for agreeing to be here. I truly appreciate it. Now, before we dive into the depth of your story, do you mind telling us a little bit about your life as a child before it got as complicated as it did?
Yeah, sure. So when I was born, and in my culture and cultures similar to mine, and I don't want to sort of restrict it to one place because people think this happened in India, but it's all happened in the United Kingdom, not far from London. But in cultures similar to mine, girls are not wanted. They're not celebrated. When a boy is born, my particular religion, it's nothing to do with religion, actually culture. They hand out sweets to people, so they go around with boxes of sweets because they've had a boy. But when a girl is born, none of that is actually carried out. It's not traditional. Girls tend not to be wanted because of the dowry aspect, and also they have this this mindset that girls can bring shame upon them, upon the family name. So when I was born, I wasn't received well. I was literally kept in my room. I wasn't allowed to leave. But when I got to 6 years old, I was allowed to come down to perform acts of service to my parents, as in cooking and cleaning. But we're not allowed to make eye contact. We keep our heads right down. And as girls, we're taught that we're not to speak either. So a lot of the communication is non-verbal. You know, I would nod. My mother would sort of say very bare minimal words like food isn't, I know that means make the food. She would point a lot, so I didn't have to communicate. So it was quite tough because I would sit in my room, literally pressing my ear against the door, you know, really pressing it hard so I could hear television, hear them interacting. I learned all about them through my ability to listen, really listen.
Wow, that's incredible. Does that mean that, because you said that your mom wouldn't speak a lot either, is it that she still had that conditioning that girls are not supposed to speak? Is that what was going on there?
No, you see, up until recently, I understood that women are part of the decision to be the perpetrators of violence and gender-based violence and perform the way they do. I always thought she had no choice, and it was, you know, what could she do? But there was so much she could have done. She didn't need to be cruel. So no, the fact she was silent is she just didn't want to talk to me. I was almost despised as a child because I was born a girl. You know, so it was almost like, oh, it's her sort of thing. Even though I did nothing wrong, because how does a young child do anything wrong? They're just children.
Right.
Unfortunately, society and the culture has this stigma about you being a girl, so they will give you that discrimination regardless of what you've done.
How did that make you feel as a child?
I didn't know any better, so I was happy, because if you don't know about something, you don't miss it, you don't want it.
Right.
The other children that I did see that were girls, they also had the same sort of treatment, maybe not as bad in such depth, but they had very similar upbringings in the sense that they knew their place, and that's how it was. So as a young girl, I didn't know any different, and I was content. I was actually really happy with everything I did. I was excited when I got called down. You know, I didn't sit and think, oh no, I don't want to go and cook. I wanted to cook because it was my way of pleasing them.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to make sure they were happy and they were fed, and I felt good for that. So it made you feel like you were doing an act of service to them, but you were also receiving in some sort of strange way.
Right. And this started at the age of 6?
At the age of 6, yeah, I could barely reach the counter. One of my favourite childhood toys, as I call them, it was a crate that had bottles in it, and it was empty, and I got to turn it upside down. And that made me the master of the kitchen, you know, suddenly the superhero that could reach everything and do everything so quickly. People say, how do you cook everything so quickly? Well, it stems back from being a young girl, having to try to do something in a small amount of time and do it well. And that stuck with me, which is a bonus, because, you know, now I'm almost master chef sort of places.
So some good came from that. At what age did you go to school?
I started school at 5.5, I think it was, so I was allowed to go to school.
Okay.
I walked to school on my own and walked back. Later on, I had a friend. She used to walk to school and back with me. but she never really quite understood why she wasn't allowed to go and play, why I couldn't go and play. She never really understood why I never had a lunchbox, because everyone going to school has a nice shiny lunchbox. In those days there were tins. They were like tins.
Right. Mm-hmm.
But she always used to get her mum, every now and then she'd get her mum to make an extra jam sandwich, which sounds really funny, but my love for jam sandwiches developed from that early age, because she would occasionally bring me one, and a lot of the time I would say that I wouldn't go in for lunch, because school was in respect, they would call you, so they would shout out whatever year you are, and you would all go into the dining hall and eat. I just didn't go in because I had nothing to eat, so I didn't go in, and I'd carry on doing what I was doing. So a lot of people didn't actually notice, but a few did, and the ones that did, they would attempt to try and be kind.
That's good. Is it that they weren't concerned for you walking to school by yourself? Is that there was no concern, or is that just the norm?
Well, back then, a lot of children walked to school on their own. Having said that, I also watched the mums pick up their children and bring them little sweeties and lollipops. You know, the main thing they bring the lollipops.
Yeah.
But I was always really happy for them. I was always super excited that their mums were coming. I never once thought, where's mine? Because I just knew she wasn't coming.
Right.
Occasionally I would walk home with my brother, but he didn't like to walk with me. So a lot of the time I walked home on my own.
Wow. So between 6 and 14, life was pretty much like that?
Yeah, so between 6 and 14, I was bullied at school because I was the only person of colour. So I did get that whole dimension of learning about how to deal with people. But again, it didn't really mean anything, because it was just part of life again. It was another lesson. If it wasn't myself getting picked on at school, it was my brother. We were the only people, as I said, of colour. So that came with the territory of where we lived, I guess. It was a predominantly white British area that my father chose to live. And that's just the way it was. The teachers didn't really do anything. They turned a blind eye. But other than that, my life was as normal as I knew it up to that age.
Right. And then at 14, a marriage was arranged for you. What transpired after that?
Yeah, so at 14, an act of child abuse occurred. I was raped by my father and his friends. They were extremely drunk, and there's no easy way of putting it, actually. It's still very fresh in my memory, so to speak. But it was a case of being thrown onto a table and thrown onto the floor and passing out and waking up in a pool of my own blood, literally. And it wasn't really, when I say the word rape, it doesn't actually describe the intensity of the brutality that was performed, because I was a very young, feeble child. And the act of cruelty was beyond understanding, especially even for myself. But whatever it was, it happened, which led to a pregnancy, and that was terminated. And I remember being at this clinic that my father had paid for me to go to, and I hadn't been collected, and I was sitting on a long sort of stretch of grass, and a lady brought me a cup of tea, and I was scared because I thought I'd done something wrong, that she was approaching me. But she put her hand on my head and stroked my hair. And it was the first time I'd had a human interaction. So that for me was massive. And I remember her handing me this cup of tea with a rich tea biscuit, a McVitie's rich tea biscuit. And I looked at it for a long time, just in disbelief it was for me. And I know that she probably wanted to do something, but people don't, which is why I do speak out, because had she done something, or somebody else at the clinic, life would have been very different. But I understand also that I had to go through those things. But because I had, as my parents described, spoilt myself, my father said that nobody would want me. And I myself was saying, well, who would want me? Because that's all I could hear, you know, being from a young age. And I really couldn't get my head around it. So I tried to take an overdose, but I didn't succeed, obviously. And my father sort of was really upset, because he said nobody will want you in an arranged marriage. I'm just going to get some water, sorry. He said the traditional route for an arranged marriage wouldn't work, because I was no longer a virgin. So one of the men that had raped me, he came forward, And he had a solution for my father. My father was really, really happy. And all he kept saying was, I'm so happy, I'm so happy, we're all so happy now. And I remember going back to my room thinking, I don't know what happy means. And I felt sick to my stomach because all I knew was I was getting married to this man's son as a fake marriage. They discussed money. They agreed, I think, on a few £1,000 plus gold. Our Indian gold is worth a lot of money. They agreed on a new washing machine. Things like that didn't really exist back then, so they were expensive. They agreed on lots of expensive clothes, and that was it. That was the agreement. It was all done. My father was happy, as I said. And that led me to get married. And that led me to get married when I just turned 17. So I literally saw my 16th birthday out, turned 17, and I was married in a stranger's house because I didn't know them at all.
And you were married to the son of the man who raised you, along with your father.
So the marriage service, the ceremony, happened at our temple to the son. The son was already involved with somebody out of our culture. He was dating an English lady, an English girl. So he was very much in a relationship. But to save face for the community, he had to get married too. Because people ask you questions, why is your son not married? Why is your daughter not married when you get to a certain age? I think he was 18, so he should have been married by 18, but he wasn't. So it was easy for him to do this because he knew why we were asking questions. So he would get to live his own life the way he wanted to live it. But on paper, he was married to me.
Wow. And that means that even though he was your husband, there was nothing to stop him from going out and having other women and anything like that.
Oh no, yeah, because when I got married and I entered their house, I was given a very small type of box room downstairs, and everyone else slept upstairs. And I'd been told by my father and mother before I left that my duties were to please them. So what they said I had to do, so I had to eat, cook for them, clean for them, and anything else that they asked me to do, was down to them.
Wow, that's incredible. I mean, to think that this is something that actually happened. What happened?
This is the problem. It still happens.
Yeah, that's the crazy part too, and this is modern day. What was that marriage like? Was it pleasant outside of the fact that you had to do all of those things? Was he kind to you?
So I didn't speak to my husband at all. We had no communication. He was barely there. He was there for 4 long years, and I suffered from sexual abuse for 4 long years by my father-in-law. So I was not only treated badly by my mother-in-law, my father-in-law was sexually abused me. They would tie me up with a coat hanger around my ankles, a metal coat hanger, which would then dig into my skin. And I was so frightened, I wouldn't even cry because I thought they would know that I was crying from my face. So they would leave me naked for hours as a punishment because I was a girl, and go out. And it was a sense of control as well, and instilling fear. They would go out for hours, come back, and I would still be sitting in the same place. And sometimes they would go for a whole day, but I wasn't able to move or use the toilet, so I'd soil myself, and I would sit there because I had nothing. I couldn't move. The stupid thing is that had they not done that, I would have still sat there out of fear. They didn't need to actually impose that additional infliction of pain.
Yeah.
But for them, they seemed to get some sort of
pleasure.
Yeah, it was almost like a tap on their back to say, well, yeah, we've got this, she won't do anything, we've got complete control over her. But they already had it because I was so fearful.
Right. I can't imagine what that must have been like for you. You must have been terrified.
No, most definitely. I mean, after 14 and having gone through the abuse, my life completely changed. I was no longer that happy child.
Right.
I was very withdrawn. The teachers didn't notice. My friend, I didn't speak to my friend anymore. I practically stopped speaking to her. Whereas before she would teach me dances on the way to school and teach me about Michael Jackson songs, and she would teach me this is how the song goes, and I would learn it. I completely lost interest in everything.
I can imagine.
But for me, life became full of anxiety. I was definitely depressed at that time, and I was literally putting one foot in front of the other, like many people still are. You know, there's a lot of people, regardless of which culture you're from or background, we all have those days where we can barely get through, and we just can't see light at the end of the tunnel.
Right. I definitely get that part. And you're right, many people are still living that way. They're stuck in the trauma and there's no help. So at what point, I know when I listened to your TED Talk, you said that you ran away from that home. At what point did that happen? And what triggered that move?
Yeah, sure, yeah. So my new family, you know, had said that I had to work, I had to get a job. One of the first people of my colour, of any colour, to get a managerial job in a very large firm on a very good wage. But I was very determined to get this job because I knew I was under pressure to supply money, and I was a people pleaser. So I thought, if I go and get this amazing job, they'll maybe like me. You know, I was always wanting people to accept me.
Right.
But the job meant I was exposed to a different kind of culture where people talked about relationships, people dated, people dressed differently, people expressed how they felt, they talked at the coffee machine especially. And even though I was a manager, I would speak to everybody with love, and when you are treated badly, you don't want to treat anybody else badly normally.
True.
And that's how I was. So somebody at work said to me, there was a couple, he was actually Nigerian, she was Indian, and the Indian girl said, you know, if you ever get in trouble, come and stay with us. And I thought, oh, that's nice. Somebody's actually offering to do that for me. I don't know them that well. And I got quite friendly with them. But she said to me, go back to your parents, because being at your parents can't be as bad as where you are. And I almost romanticized this idea, because I've always been a little bit of a dreamer, and reading fairy tales when I was growing up, I romanticized going to my parents, them holding me tight and making me feel better. So that's what I did. I went to work one day after being quite hurt quite badly by my father-in-law. I decided I'm not going to do this anymore. I took nothing. All of my things were left, the gold, the money, everything. And I just put on what I normally would wear for work and didn't go back. But I'd got onto a bus, which wasn't my normal bus, and somebody from our community had seen it. And this is the days before we had mobile phones and texts. The communication of word of mouth was far faster, and I'm sure you understand this. You know, somebody will see something, supposed auntie, you know, friends of the family, call them aunties, and the aunties were very fierce with their communication. And before I got home, they knew I was coming.
Wow. And what was the reception like when you got there?
So, like I said, I imagined being pulled in, and I was pulled in, but not in an embrace. I was pulled in by my hair. My father opened the door. He was very, very angry. He was shouting all sorts of abuse at me, that nobody will want me now. Why did I leave? They knew I was coming. Have I got a boyfriend? You know, that everyone will spit upon them. The insults were very crude as well. They have a way with words, I'll say, to make you feel visible. And I think that's the thing almost. And the beating started. You know, they started to beat me. My father was a professional wrestler in the 1970s, 80s. And my brother that was there, I had two brothers. One of them was there, one of them wasn't. My brothers are 6 foot tall, both very stocky, big. I was quite small compared to them. And they just started to beat me, but it was like no other beating I'd had before, and I've been beaten many a times. But this time, I knew things were different. They were beating me to kill me. I was bouncing off the walls. They broke my arm, my jaw, and when I fell down, they started to stamp upon me and throw insult upon insult upon insult, which carried its own weight, really. And when they stamped upon me, they broke my hip. And at some point, I did pass out, and I felt like I could see myself from the outside in. And then I just remember numbness. I could hear them, but it was like almost like a background noise. I no longer felt them stamping on me and kicking me. I could no longer hear them, but I knew I was there. And then eventually my other brother came and said, "Don't kill her here. We have to take her to India to kill her. We can't do it here." And he stopped them.
So you didn't come into your defense. So this is the common mentality of men then, that because none of them of all three, none came to your rescue. He said, "We can't kill her here."
Yeah.
That means had it been an ideal location, you would have probably joined in.
Yeah, had he been there from the beginning, I'm more than likely sure he would have joined in, but it was a blessing he didn't, because to have three of them doing that, I most certainly probably wouldn't be sat here talking to you today.
Wow. What happened next? Where did they take you?
So I lay there, literally. They left me. You have to understand there were a lot of bones broken. I was unable, literally, to move. So they left me lying in my own blood again on the same carpet upon which I'd been raped before. And I was so weak, the only thing I could move was my head. And I was thinking all sorts of things. And I remember the door opening, and I thought maybe it was my mother. Nobody had even checked upon me for those days. They'd just left me there. I remember somebody's voice, and it was my mother's friend, one of my mother's friends, who I called Auntie, because I'd known her since I was a young girl.
Mm-hmm.
She was particularly kinder than some of my mother's other friends. She would make sure that she would make eye contact and smile when she did see me, which means a lot. That small act of kindness goes a long way.
Mm-hmm.
And she warned me. She said that on Sunday they're taking you to India. Try to escape at the airport. And she left as quickly as she came. She went just as quickly. And I lay there thinking, what am I going to do? I do not want to go to India. I do not want to be killed. If I get to the airport and I have my mother on one side, my father on the other, I'm not going to have the strength to say, help me. I'm not going to have the strength. I won't be able to. And I kept telling myself I can't do that. And then I got to the decision that I had to leave that day. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to do it, and I would just give in. Because when you are suffering, when you are struggling, the easy option is to give in. And sometimes you think, it's like trying to, I don't know, run a race, I'm guessing, and you're getting right to the end and you're just barely running, and you're just struggling to just finish that, get to the finish line.
Yeah.
And then when you do get to the finish line, you think, oh, thank God, I've finished now. It really was a race in my own mind of, do I get out? How do I get out? And I tried to get up, I couldn't. Literally everything was hurting. And I actually say I got up on my hands and knees, but it was this part of my arm, the forearm. And I started to crawl, and I would fall, and I'd start again. But eventually I did escape. Just before I escaped, I saw my dog, and I thought she's going to start barking. But animals have an instinctive ability to know when someone's in pain. I've seen this time and time again. And she didn't say a word. She just sort of looked at me. I remember patting her and just getting over the wall, and I passed out in a park that was opposite the house. My father, I could see going back and forth before I passed out. And then I don't know what happened. The next thing I knew, I woke up. It was very early in the morning. I think most of the world was asleep, especially where I lived. And I managed to somehow get to a taxi rank and get to help.
Wow. It's only by God's grace why you're here today, isn't it?
I believe I was supposed to survive. I believe I was supposed to go through that trauma, those near-death experiences, as I call them. I felt I was reborn twice on that carpet. And every time I feel I've been reborn, even in later on, I've learned something so much so, and I wouldn't change it. I wouldn't change it for anything, because I love who I am today, and I love that I can offer this amount of knowledge, this amount of feeling. You can read a textbook, you can study a subject of honour killings, you can study or trafficking. And I want to give a shout out to the lady I work with human trafficking, Youth Underground, Rasha. She does some amazing things to help people when she comes out. People are saved from trafficking. She helps them a lot with their mindsets and helps them as well. But I won't be able to tell you the story or anybody else. It would just be me reading from a textbook. There would be no depth to it. there'd be no rawness. And I know that I went through those, that I was able to help a young girl that's suffering because she's not wanted, that feeling of being unloved. And many of us feel that anyway. A lot of us feel that we can't please our parents in many cultures, including Jamaica, which is why I wanted to be on this. There's a lot of domestic violence and a lot of child cruelty that occurs, and it's very much that you keep it within the house. You cannot talk about it. And this is the crazy part, that a lot of people will reach out to their parents and mothers and say that somebody is indecently, you know, someone's touched me in a certain way or done something, but they're told to be quiet and leave it alone, sort of things, whereas the parent should be saying, right, I'm going to do something about it. Yeah. And it's that false stigma that's attached. So nothing gets done, and that person then has to take that feeling that they've had, or that abuse that they've incurred, all the way to adulthood, where they then have to almost retrace back to that trauma to face it and overcome it.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with you 100%. You were meant to survive, and I was meant to have this conversation with you, because the aim of my show is to show other people that, yes, you are here, but it's not over, you know? And I mean, you've been through hell and back, and you're here, and you've made it to success, and now you have a wonderful life, and you can help others. That is really the purpose of the show. So I'm truly, truly grateful that you survived, and that I get to talk to you, and that we get to share this with other people. Let's go back to the story a little bit. When you got to the taxi, did you go to the hospital? Did you go to a friend? What happened next?
Well, I actually went to my friends who said I could stay there, but they weren't there, typically.
Oh. And
opposite their flat was a police station. So naturally, I thought I should go to the police station. I didn't know what I was doing, really. And I remember the policeman's name. His name was PC so I thought, well, it's all the P's, you know, it's quite funny. He seemed a really nice, kind person, but as soon as I mentioned it was an honor killing, because he said, oh, what's happened, you know, who did this? And I said, oh, it was an attempted honor killing by my parents. He didn't want to know. It was almost like he wasn't interested. He'd taken the photos until I said that. Then it was suddenly, let's get you to a hospital. You need medical attention really quickly. So he called an ambulance. And I never heard from the police again. So whilst I was in the hospital, a couple of nurses asked me what had happened again. Nothing was done about it, or suggested, or some counselling given, or some help, or we should call the police, you should press charges. None of that happened. Had quite a few nurses, so different people. It wasn't one person all the time. And I stayed in the hospital for quite a while. I think it was 3 weeks. They had to keep me. And then I was transferred to a women's hospital, which I couldn't deal with. There were lots of people there fighting their own demons, and their way of numbing the pain was alcohol or drugs, and I wasn't accustomed to that. So for me, it was quite scary being around people not understanding that, or having that mentality to understand, whereas now I could get it. So I left, and I turned up back at my friends to see if they were there. Right. He'd split up with his girlfriend. She had gone to decide to have an arranged marriage because her parents were forcing her. And they had sort of somehow, again, with manipulation and that whole, you know, you owe us everything mentality, they managed to persuade her to go and have an arranged marriage. So it was just him. He said, you can live here, but you have to pay me rent, even though I was still bandaged up and not really able to. I found a job very quickly and started paying him rent, and was living in his spare room.
Wow, man. Amazing. So now you were living here. Your parents didn't know where you were, did they? Did they know you were still alive? What was going on with them?
No, my parents were looking for me. They were looking for me. They'd even hired a private detective, and they didn't find me until a little bit later on. What happened was, a little while after I started living there, and I started to feel a bit better about myself, and my injuries were healing, I was invited to a party by the person I was renting with my friend, and he introduced me to alcohol. I'd never had anything to drink before. It was Malibu. Never drank it again, never will. I came back, and he took advantage of me whilst I was drunk, which meant I ended up pregnant. But being pregnant pregnant gave me a new sense of belonging, need, you know, and a purpose to life.
Right,
And
yeah.
everything seemed to make sense, but I didn't really have a relationship with him. And in my culture, if you have a baby with somebody or you're pregnant, you stay with that person regardless. And when she was born, my parents found me and found out that I had a baby girl. So they tried to kidnap her, to kill her. They came dressed in wigs because they'd hired a private investigator to find out where I was. He found out where I was. They arrived, as I said, with wigs, disguises. They offered to pay, when I wouldn't open the door, they offered to pay the landlord a large sum of money to tell them where I would be, when I would be there. And he said, oh, they've gone, they moved. So that took them off the trail again.
Wow. So they wanted to take your daughter because they didn't get to destroy you, so they wanted to destroy your child.
Well, she was a girl born out of wedlock, and also my partner was African. He was black African, so that in my culture is shameful because you're marrying or with somebody that's out of your own culture. And they wanted to hide the mistake, as they called her, and get rid of her, and then they would come back to deal with me, but at the point they were trying to take her away.
Wow. That child is still alive, correct?
Yeah, she's my daughter. Yeah, she's my eldest daughter.
Good, that's good to know. Did they find you at any point in time?
No, because the landlord had sort of said to them, moved away, I think they probably hired another private investigator, but they never really found me. So our paths really didn't cross, and I was very exceptionally careful. I was constantly looking over my shoulder in case I saw them because I knew how angry my father was. He had sworn that he would finish me off, and his words were always, "I'll put you under the floorboards," is what he used to say. And I believe him. I believe he would, and I still believe that he would try to do that because he has that mentality. But no, they didn't find me, and I went on later on to have a son. 5 years later, I had a son. My relationship was very rocky because I didn't really know what a relationship was supposed to be. So he would go off to the pub and do what he wanted, and I worked. I was the one that was working. I created my own business. I started a mobile phone business because I was listening to this gentleman one day in the shop because we lived on top of a shop, and he was telling them, you know, I'm making so much money selling mobile phones. And I ran after him, stopped him and said, sorry, I heard you talking, can I work with you or for you? I'd like to start something. And he said, he sort of laughed at me and said, no, don't be so silly, sort of thing. But I remember he said his business was in Kettering, which was a town quite close by. And I took my daughter into the pushchair, pushed her down to the public phone box because we didn't have phones. And I found his details, went back and I wrote him a proposal. In those days, we didn't have computers either. So I hand wrote a proposal, went and posted it, and he came back and said, actually, I'll have you working with me. And it changed everything because I was selling mobile phones left, right and centre, doing really, really well. And that's how I started my entrepreneurial journey.
Where's your dad today?
My dad has not long come out of prison. He lives about 400 miles away from me, roughly. He left the prison a criminal and was welcomed as a hero by the local community because he had done something to uphold the honour of not just his family but also the community by acting in the way he did with my sister. My sister was born out of wedlock and he abducted her in 2015 and left her. Well, he sold her to traffickers in India. It's described as a school, but when the British police went, they weren't allowed to have access, and all of the newspapers and press described it as a prison. So she was never, unfortunately, seen again. He was charged for abduction.
You haven't seen your sister since?
I haven't seen my sister ever because I didn't know about her. By the time she was born, I wasn't there and I didn't know. And also because he'd had her out of wedlock, he didn't see her. He knew that she was born, but he ignored it. I think when she got to 5, he went over and said to the lady that he'd like to take her to the park a couple of times and built that relationship. And then he went over when he planned what he was doing. got the lady drunk and abducted her. But luckily, she told the police, because why wouldn't she? Had she been of the same culture, she probably wouldn't have.
Right.
But she spoke up because it was her child at the end of the day. And although I've not met her, I feel a real connection with her. So, yeah.
Wow. Have you tried looking for her?
Yeah, I have. Yeah. With my connections with the human trafficking awareness, I've connected with somebody in America who actually told me where she was left, told me it was a place where they harvest organs. He said that if she was weak, they would have sent her to one of the United Arab State places, could be any of them, Dubai or somewhere, as a servant, like a domestic servant.
Right.
Which is modern day slavery, obviously, in trafficking.
Mm-hmm.
But I haven't actually been able to locate her. But working with Rasha, who was on here earlier, I know that she said to me many times that often victims come forward after years, after maybe lots of years. So I hold hope, but I also know it's my duty to talk out, because there are many of my sisters in that sense. All of those young girls are my sisters, or they're possibly me. It's been my calling too. So it's my right to speak out, and I will continue to do so.
And I'm grateful to you for doing that, for just having, because many people have their stories and they're so afraid to come forth and just talk about it and to share their story. They're not strong enough. So I mean, the fact that you garnered the strength to speak about it, that alone is a lot. So I'm grateful to you for doing that. Do you personally know other women who've gone through similar experience?
Yes, definitely. Since I I did an interview with somebody, I was desperate to speak to people in my own community, because you do naturally, you want to reach out,
right?
Because you know their life, you know the way they're living, and there's almost a slight guilt that you're now this free person, full of love for yourself and everybody else, but they're still suffering in silence and living in fear, which is a huge thing. And I was desperate to speak to somebody in my own community, but nobody would interview me, nobody wanted to. But I did eventually get somebody that did a little documentary type thing on me, and that made a lot of people come forward. So my inbox on my LinkedIn, on my Instagram got really, really busy. A lot of them were threats. People were threatening to behead me. But a lot of them were also people saying that they had suffered from child abuse from an uncle or a father's friend or something, and never been able to speak about it because of the stigma and shame.
Right.
Some came forward because they were forced into marriages, and they're living in those marriages and they're unhappy. But what can they do, and the whole domestic violence thing. And then I also had a lot of people, interestingly, come forward that were men, saying that they too had witnessed things, and they feel bad because they were part of it, but they felt they were obliged to do it because of the culture, and also that they were victims because they didn't want to have an arranged marriage either, which is true. But the only thing they didn't suffer is the violence that women suffer in my culture. So men also go through a huge amount of pressure, mental health, depression, and they're almost living two lives, the life they wish they could live and the life they're forced to live. So I totally respect them too.
Wow. So how many countries, I know this happens in India, how many other countries does this happen in?
We'll do, I always say it happens in Asia, because China is one of the worst places it happens. Korea is, again, another place. So a lot of Asia has this issue. Remember, it changes from family to family. You might have ketchup with your, I don't know, pizza, and I would never have it, sort of thing. So it depends on your own personal family, but it's very common. So most of Asia, Africa is surprisingly really bad for this. I have someone that was trying to get on a call with me earlier called Efe. She's in Nigeria, and again we work with domestic violence, but we also work with child brides because it's another problem there. And the Middle East, again, you see, if the girl refuses to go through with the child marriage, they will kill her, literally kill her, or stone her to death. There's so many different ways they will do something. but the Middle East is another place. So, but then you have other places here and there that also have the same sort of mindset that a girl is a commodity. So we can use this commodity to silly goats, because goats will provide us a farming type of ability, so we can provide for, you know, the family. And it's crazy, but it's true. And this happened a long time ago, but the mindsets have not changed. The only thing that's changed is, in the sense of an honor killing, is that now they will video and almost as bragging rights that we've beheaded. And I've put things on my LinkedIn, so if anyone's not checked it out, check out my LinkedIn and my Instagram page. I remember a case where a girl had had a love marriage and left her parents and was happily married, and the parents pretended they were making up with the daughter, so they travelled. The brother travelled and the mother travelled. The mother held her daughter's ankles while the brother beheaded his sister, and then he held the head and videoed it, and it's there for everyone to see, and so many people watching it. It's crazy, because you think, well, this is murder, and it is. You know, I went through an attempted murder. It was murder, but it was disguised under the name of honor. There is no honor in killing, which is the title of my TED Talk. How is there honor in killing? There's nothing honorable about it. It's actually dishonorable. But if you're told it's honorable, you will think it, and you will do what your parents are telling you to do. So that mindset needs to change with the younger generation, for them to understand that without baby girls there is no future. I say that in my TED Talk too. And you think it's common sense, but it really isn't. And girls are still placed under lorries in India, under the wheel, opposite the driver's side. So when the driver gets in, he runs over the baby. They have places in India where the door will open, you place your baby in, the door closes and it won't open again. And those children are kept there and trafficked later on or sold. And people think it's like a charitable thing, but really it isn't, because there's no value given to a girl's life. There's no value. In China, they have decapitated babies on the streets, and magazine that story, it was their front page, but nothing gets done about it. So although it's very shocking and shocking value, there's only a point of us telling these stories if we're going to do something. And the way that we can do something is if everyone pulls together, talks about it, so it becomes normality. So child abuse becomes so much normal, so open, that the person that's doing it thinks twice, because he knows they're going to talk about it. I can't touch her, because she'll talk about it, because everyone talks about it now. It's like the Me Too movement. People talk about it when one person does. But if the honor killing survivors can come forward, a lot of them are in hiding. They won't come forward because they become targeted, and I understand that, because I'm targeted. But we need to change something, and I feel like I'm pushing this snowball up the mountain, really difficult. You know, it's a lot of effort, but I know that when I get to the top, by then there'll be a whole army of us pushing it down. It'll be easier to come down. Maybe not in my lifetime, but another lifetime change will come.
Right. So I was asking, in those countries where the issue is so rampant, for example, China and India, is it that the law accepts it? Is it legal in those places?
The laws are very loose in those countries, yes. You have to understand that these problems are not religious, they are cultural. So the people that are running the religious places of worship have these cultural mentalities, and the people that are leading the countries have these cultural mentalities. So if you've got that cultural mentality, you are not going to pass a law that protects the girls, and you may pass one or two laws, but it doesn't mean that law will ever really be put into place. We know that India has had numerous things on the news, and it has become global news, whereby women have been gang raped, and they've been attacked, women from not that country, so a woman maybe from the UK, and that's made
so the law is loose, so people have their own agendas. And these countries, like for example, some kind of union with other countries where, you know, when most countries are a part of these things, they're pressured to put certain things in place. Are they not a part of these organizations?
Not really, no. You can't really impose these things. You see, if you understand it, I mean, the British government knows that thousands of girls are taken out of the country to be killed in Pakistan, in India, and the schools know they don't come back. Social services know they don't come back. The doctors know they don't come back. So if you know this, you should have a harsher sanction when a young person is going, or the airport staff should be taught to recognise something that looks like a possible honour killing or a possible marriage. But it's not, because most countries are not going to do anything about it because they condone it. You know, they're not sort of saying it's not allowed. It's all very hush-hush, no one talks about it, but everyone knows it's happening.
That sounds so bizarre, though.
It's hard to understand. I understand that it's hard to understand because you're not from that culture as well, but it's no surprise to somebody from my culture to understand because I've seen it and I've lived it.
Right.
I mean, even in this country, you know, even in this day and age, even my daughter knows people, and people are just young people are still struggling to actually make decisions for themselves because they're not allowed, is the word, not allowed, continues. We're not allowed to do this, or I'm not allowed to do that. So whilst they're at university, they'll live a totally different life. When they go back to university, they reverse almost to their prior life they had of being subservient, listening to their parents. And that goes both for boys and girls. The girls, if they refuse, the difference is the girls will be threatened and killed, whereas the boys, they'll be persuaded or be told to live two lives, so to speak.
So they would go home, they'll come to college, they'll get conditioned a different way, go back home and get reconditioned, so they come back as what they were before.
Yeah, I don't think they've ever not been conditioned. It's just they have a lease of freedom. So they almost learn about what a relationship could be like, and they learn about freedom. They learn about being able to choose what you want to eat. You're not being told, you know, that having that freedom of choice, basically, and the fundamental human rights that we should all have. But when they go back, they give them up, I guess. But that also leads to living a very unhappy life. The boys will become quite aggressive because they're living a life and they're almost, it's like metal against metal. There's friction in their own minds and lives. For the girls, they don't believe that they can have the life that they want to have. So they know, you see, the problem as well is that you're disowned by everyone, and being disowned by your whole family and community is quite difficult to deal with. And not many people have the strength to stand up and say, actually, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to live this way, the way you want me to live.
Right. Yeah, it takes guts. It takes a lot of things to just be able to help, much less to say I'm not going to do this and I'm not going to do that. So I can definitely understand how hard that must be for them. Are there any support groups, for example, women who are in these kinds of relationships, they're in these marriages, they can't get out, but are there like support groups or something that they get some kind of support from? Is there anything like that?
Yeah, there are quite a few, but I've been working with a few of them, and I've actually been learning about a few of them. And you have to be careful because, unfortunately, some people set up a non-profit, but they don't actually want to help you, which I can't understand, but I've come across it. Maybe, you know, sometimes they want it's an egotistical thing, I'll put it that way, you know, say that I'm doing this, but I don't really want to do something. For me, if anyone comes to me and says they need help, I'll always help them, regardless of who they are. And I won't also say I'm only going to help South Asian women, which is apparently descriptive that I fit into, because I don't fit into anything. I'm a source of energy, I'm a human being, and I'm a source of love. So whether you're female, male, of any colour, of any culture, I believe you should be able to come to one person and get help, and everyone should also offer that help. They shouldn't say, well, actually, you don't fit my tip list, so I can't help you today. You should be able to get that help from anyone. But yes, there are some people that have set up. I would recommend, if anyone's listening to this and they need help and they can't come to me, to go to something called Sharon Project. I met the owner 2 days ago, yesterday it could have been. Amazing woman. She knows her facts. She knows exactly what she can do for you. They have cases, they have social care, and they have a program that can really help you from A to B. I'll be completely honest with you. My role has been, people contact me and say, a couple of weeks ago I had a 15-year-old girl contact me saying she was being forced into a marriage. They'd beaten her up because she refused. It was a marriage to her cousin. She didn't want to marry her cousin. And this sweet girl, all she wanted to do was become a midwife. That was her whole why. But she was so determined on being this. She didn't want to give up her culture, her religion, or identity. And I said, you don't have to do any of those things. But with safeguarding, I would have to report this or try and help you as I can. And I said, if you can get to a train station for me, I will book you a ticket and get you to safety. And that's all I did. I didn't hear from her for 3 days, and I thought she's given in to them. They were going to take her to Pakistan, but surprisingly, she got on the phone, called me, and I was elated. I was literally dancing, trying to stay calm at the same time, saying, okay, I'm going to send you a reference number. You can use your card. If you've got a card, if you've got this, you know, otherwise go to the cashier and I can speak to them. But she had a card, luckily. That's what you need to get the ticket out. And she did that, gave her the reference. She stayed on the phone until she got her ticket. I sent her some money over to get herself a hot drink and something to eat. And when she got to the other end, she was collected by a social worker that I'd placed by speaking to various people. And they rang me. They're not supposed to ring me afterwards, but she did ring me because she knew I was particularly worried about this girl, to say that she'd found another family who also practiced the same religion. And she was allowed to carry on wearing her traditional dress, and she's really happy and she's settled really well. I don't always hear from these people ever again, I'll be honest with you, and that's okay, because I've always said I don't want to save people. That's not what I'm about. I want to shine that light through that tunnel so they can help themselves, because I know that struggle, that going through A to B, getting to the other side is really important in who you want to run, because that's me. So although I could take their hand and lead the way, I want to teach them how to lead their own way so they can teach somebody else. And I know, hand on heart, she will not only bring new life into this world, she will help life for those people who don't think there is life. And I know that's a beautiful thing that she will create.
That's amazing. That's really amazing. There's a question that I keep forgetting to ask. How does someone go through all that you've been through? And I'm asking this question. I know how, but I'm asking this question because I want to hear your response. How does someone go through all that you've been through and still be able to love and still be able to be kind? I know a lot of people, they go through something like this, and at the end of that, they get rebellion, they get anger, they get violence. Yeah. How does someone go through that and be the bright, shiny light person that you are?
Well, thank you. Well,
you're welcome.
If my parents hadn't taught me to cook and look after them, I wouldn't be the person I am. I know that for sure. But my father, without knowing, was teaching me to give unconditional love. You know, I would cook for him, never say a bad word. I was very happy in the kitchen, and I would be happy when I knew they were eating. So I would listen and wait for that ching on the, you know, when you put your spoon on the plate or knives and forks down, I would hear that. And I would feel happy because I knew that I'd given them that food. And you're feeding love to that person.
Right.
He didn't teach me to ride a bike. He taught me to love unconditionally. And I'm very, very thankful for that. You have to understand, if it wasn't for my mother and father, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be sitting right here today. So I have such an appreciation of everything I've been through. My ex-partner gave me 3 amazing children, despite the violence and causing homelessness. But then would I have appreciation for homeless people? Probably not. I would probably stick a cup of coffee like most people do and walk by. And all you want when you're homeless is to be seen, for someone to give you 5 minutes of their day and ask you, how are you? And actually be interested, because again, the act of kindness. So I love who I am because of all the imperfections that I've gone through, and I still have. I'm 90% most of the time this person you see here. We all have our off days. I'm only human. Some days I'm frustrated I'm not making enough change quick enough.
Yeah.
Some days I wish I was excuse me. I was oh, I'm gonna have to drink. Sorry. Some days I wish I was learning more so that I can help more. You know, that wealth would create more opportunities. So I don't know. I suppose it's just the way I worked out. But you have a choice, don't you?
You do.
You can either stay in the past, or you can use that past to stand into your personal power and really own your own greatness and make a change.
That is definitely a fact. Based on everything that you said, I think I already know the answer to this question, but I'm going to ask anyway. Okay. What impact do you want to make on this world?
So most people think I'm a feminist. I'm not. The impact I want to make on the world, if there was one thing I could do, is for everyone to love themselves more. Someone said to me the other day, what would your perfect job be? And I said, I would be a post lady or a post man, but it's really not about the delivering. It's about writing letters, and I would write everybody a love letter and say how I see them.
Yeah.
The way I see myself, I would describe how I see them. Sometimes we can't see how great we are. We need someone else to tell us. We look for those compliments. Do I look good in this dress? Is my hair okay? We look for that person to give us that that recognition that, yeah, you look great.
Yeah.
But I would love to write a letter to every single person in this world, everyone, just pointing out their brilliance and how good they are and what they're good at, so that they can take that, and every time they look in the mirror, they remember those words and they love themselves that little bit more. It's a progressive thing, but I know it could happen. And also, I suppose the other thing is, on a more of an alignment with my activism, is that every human has the fundamental rights, as I've said. Everyone has the fundamental rights of freedom, freedom of choice, freedom to love, freedom to have, you know, to go where they want to go, to do what they want to do within reason. Because when you have that freedom, you can be who you really want to be. You're not somebody else. You're not a daughter or a mother or a sister. You're who you want to be.
Yeah.
And it affects men as much as it affects women, as I keep
saying.
Does.
Yeah, it does. It really does. And I do not think you're a feminist. I think in every single way, what you're doing is helping men and women, because as you said, there are men who don't want to be in arranged marriages, and can imagine that in many of those cases, because they don't want to be in that marriage, it turns out to be violence. It turns out to be something, resentment or something that it's not. So I don't see how others get feminism out of that, but I don't think it is.
No.
It's definitely not. My next question to you is, if you were given the chance to attend your own funeral sometime in the distant future, very distant future, what would you like to hear the people that love you say about you?
Oh gosh, I've never been asked that before, I have to admit. You do come out with them, don't you? I know the track I want them to play, which is a Dr. Dre track, so I'm very much 90s hip-hop girl. Okay. I think I just want a celebration. And I know you do that in Jamaica with the 9 nights and everything, you know, you have that celebration thing. And I'd love for, obviously everyone's going to feel sad, but for every person that I've ever met, or any person that has met me or heard me, I want them to understand that I still live within them, I live through them. So if you've had an interaction, that love that I've shared with you is always going to be there, it's never going to go. So have that within your heart and use that love that I've given to you to love yourselves and pass on to others.
Amazing. This has been a wonderful conversation, and again, I am grateful for your openness and for just being here and for everything that you do. I mean, everywhere we go in this world, there will be different countries, different cultures who face different things, right? For me, it wasn't anything that is remotely close to what you've been through. And would I be able to go through something that you go through and still be here? Only God knows. But we get what we're supposed to bring to the table. We get what we can manage, right? For me, growing up, it was self-esteem, it was self-doubt, it was being abused with a whip or something like that. But we all have our own things that we have to overcome, and that's where my passion to help other people, just like yours, that's where mine comes from, right? Now, you're here now, you're a mental health coach, you help to lead people to even become more successful. You've been through a lot. On a daily basis, how do you manage on those days when you have when you're 90% yourself or who you prefer to be? How do you compartmentalize, or how do you just maintain a mindset that is positive and vibrant and light and free? How do you do that?
I'm just very grateful. When you've had so many near-death experiences as I've had, you are grateful for every day you are here. Being homeless was a real shock to my system. I was a millionaire before that, and I became penniless. And building that has been, you can either look at it as a struggle or you can look at it as exciting, and I chose to play a game and have it as an exciting thing. And I've learned so much about myself, and I know money isn't everything, but obviously we need to support me. And more money, as I said, I have more people I can help. But I actually am just a very happy, grateful person, a very simple person. I don't need too much. I am in love with Mother Nature, as I've told you many times. So I've got a nice long green lawn outside, which I stand upon every day, and I count my blessings. I do my affirmations, I count my blessings. And I actually do jump out of bed. I'm one of those excitable people that annoy others, and I jump out of bed and I run down the stairs, and every day is a new day for me. And as I said, I'm living very much here and now, not yesterday, not even tomorrow. I'm doing maximizing my days.
If anyone wants to join your cause or the cause, how do they reach you? How do they connect?
Yeah, so my name is Nina Aouilk, as I said, and I have a website called ninaaouilk.com. You can literally see everything from there. My non-profit, which I'm getting registered this month, I'm going to put a date to it, it's called End Honor Killing. If you want to donate, don't have a cup of coffee tomorrow, just send that couple of pounds to me. It makes a huge difference. As I said, when we collectively put it together, we can get another girl on a train to safety, and it literally does mean a difference between life and death. But what you can do without spending any money is you can talk about it. You can watch my TED Talk. You can talk about what other people have been through, so that maybe there is a teacher out there within your network that you can speak to, and she can understand, or he can understand, what to look out for and help somebody. Because if you're not helping, you are as much of the problem as, the people that have caused the problem. Obviously, I say the hand signals, which are to keep your hand out, you put your thumb in and close it, and that means you're trapped. That's used for domestic violence. That's used for anything you're in trouble with. A lot of people have been trained. If you know someone's being forced out of the country, I do say if they put a metallic object into their underwear safely so it doesn't fall out, that will set off the alarms when they get to security, and then they have to be brave and ask for help. They will be taken into a separate room, and they have to insist they don't want somebody with them. And that could be, again, life, the difference between life and death for them too. If someone had said that to my sister, maybe she would still be here, I don't know. But my father went through several different places before we got to India, and none of the airport staff thought it was irregular that he was travelling with somebody who looked nothing like him. She would have been noticeably scared. She didn't know him. And she was 6 years old, so there would have been tears, I'm sure, at some point. And one person can make such a huge difference. So never disregard what an impact you can have on the world. So please do speak out and do something, a discreet call, anything. Just don't be a bystander watching.
Thank you for sharing. And guys, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for watching, for staying, for listening. This video is going to remain on my Instagram, and it's also going to go on my YouTube channel. So I'll have the link. I'll share all my videos with every single person in my contact who's on WhatsApp, and I share it with people on my Facebook and on my Instagram. So I'll share the link to the video for YouTube on my Instagram as well, and you guys can take it and share it with other people so that people can see, people can know what's going on, so that everything starts with awareness, right? And I know when I share this story, many people are going to be shocked. because not everybody is aware. I knew there were some things happening, but to the depth that Nina spoke about, I had no clue, right? So share the video out with your friends. Usually I'll tell you what you should buy from me, but today I'm saying share the video out with your friend. Share to people who are not on Instagram. Just share it out. Share the story so people can know what's going on, so we can help to even bring awareness, even if it's to let other women like Nina know that they don't have to be where they are. There is a possibility that they can get relief, they can move, they can leave their family. This being dishonored is I can imagine it's heavy, but your life is precious. Life is really, really precious. We're here on this planet to spread joy, to have experiences, to live, to laugh, to have fun, to have families. And to think that someone can just take someone else's life, their own child, not just a random stranger, their own child, a mother. I'm sitting here, I'm thinking, I have a daughter, and I'm thinking, I don't even want to slap my daughter, right? And I'm thinking, you as a mother, you are sitting or holding your child and allowing someone else to abuse your child, to kill your child. The mindset of that person has to be really messed up, because if you see your child, go ahead.
Yeah. No, I was just going to say they're just programmed that way. They're just conditioned that
way. It is.
And it's not for everyone to understand, but another thing everyone can do is support. They can support me, they can support you, they can support the message, as you said, they can support other people. Support's huge. Having that support and people to lean on is massive. So
it is. I mean, I saw my daughter curled up in a corner crying one day because she felt when I got so scared. Right? She was just crying. She wasn't hurt. She wasn't physically hurt. She was just crying in the corner. And when I investigated, she was just feeling overwhelmed by schoolwork. And I hugged her and I comforted her. I'm thinking, the minds, and we can't. It's hard to say we can't really blame the mothers, but somewhere inside of them, there's a battle going on, and they're choosing the easier way out. They're choosing the ease. So it's a matter of becoming aware, of sharing, of spreading it, making it not okay. That's where we start to bridge the gap and start to create change. So again, guys, thank you for joining us. Please share out the video. And Nina, it was an absolute pleasure to have you here with me today. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Enjoy the rest of your Thursday and week, everyone, and see you all next week. Oh, if you're not following me, I'm here every Thursday. My story is either something similar to this, or it's a story from someone with expertise as to how you can get out of a situation. But it's always an edifying story. It's always a story to help you see life from a different perspective. So follow me if you're not following me, so that's how you can support me with getting these kinds of stories out there. All right. See you guys next week, and goodbye. Bye, Nina.